Easter is better with paint and a bunny. Welcome to Wild Developments. My name is Lauren, and my mission is help you to connect with nature through art, storytelling, and some creative exploration. Today, we're going to talk about Easter and, of course, the bunny. Let's dive in. Materials needed for this project: watercolor paper, our outline, a paint palette, paint, paper towel, masking tape, a spray bottle, and a container for our water. Oh, also, most important part, we're gonna need a paintbrush, a pen, and then also a pencil. In a little bit more detail about some of our materials, I like using a number 12 round brush. It's my go-to brush for just about everything. It is big enough that I can get most large spaces, but it's also got this nice fine tip that I can go in and do some details. I also am going to be using this Micron number 8. It is a waterproof pen, so when we lay down our outline with the pen, that the ink is going to stay put and we don't have to worry about it running away. I'm also using the Alita Art Supply watercolor pad. It is a 25% cold cotton press Italian paper, and it's 140 pounds. It's a good durable paper for this project, and it's pretty affordable. I'm going to be using a light box to transfer the image onto our watercolor paper. You're going to place down your image and grab your watercolor paper, place it down, and you will tape the pages so that they stay put. And also make sure you have nice, clean, dry hands when you are doing this. If you're handling your watercolor paper and your hands are oily, you're going to get little fingerprints all throughout your piece. So just make sure you have nice, clean, dry hands. And I'll fast forward the rest of this part. So we're going to be covering a lot of fur on this animal. So you can use something like a filbert grainer. And you can see the bristles are kind of spaced out here. So if you have something like this, you can certainly use it. If you don't have something like that, you could take a brush that you are not afraid of cutting up and ruining and just go in and cut up some of those bristles and create a nice jagged brush similar to this. But the other thing you can do, because I don't want to cut this one up, I just fixed it using some hot water. But if you have a really jaggedy brush and you don't want to throw it away, you can turn it into something like what you just saw. This is a damp brush, and I spread out the bristles so that they are uneven like that. And then we'll go in with paint later on and then dry brush some of the details in the hair in. So that's a little hack that you can use to help make that texture of hair. So I will set this aside. It's going in my beautiful 3D printed case my son made for now. And we are going to start to paint. The first things first, in the ear, it does look like we have a little bit of pink. So we've got the rose color that we're going to be going in and using. So we will get just the edge right along here. And actually, looks like underneath that first, we have a really light tan. So let's go in first with a really light tan on the inside of the ear. So just doing the burnt umber, really like less than tea consistency. You want this to be very thin. And grab some water, kind of dilute it even more. Kind of along the edge there. It is going to be a little bit darker, so that's fine. And then we'll let that dry. It's also that same light tan right above the eyebrows. So if you want to add that in now, we can. So when you're looking at an animal that you're going to paint, you got to kind of break it down and see it which parts you want to do first, and then keep layering on top of each other, and eventually it creates your beautiful image. And just outside the line a little bit. All right. While I'm waiting on that ear to dry, since we're going to be going in with the pink, we'll go ahead and do the nose on this cute little guy. So this is the Eastern Cottontail. It is a rabbit that you would find in North America. And it's almost Easter, so I figured we should paint a rabbit. So we got his nose, and then kind of on either side of his lips, he's got a little bit of pink showing. Kind of a little bit right on his lip down there too. And I am going to get some water and blend it out a little bit. It's just a little hint. It's not too obvious. So Eastern Cottontails like to hang out in brushy suburban areas, and they are not endangered. In fact, they are of least concern because, well, you all have probably heard the term, they breed like rabbits, and there is a reason for that. They can have 3 to 4 litters per year and up to 3 to 8 young per litter. So max is like 32 bunnies. Minimum per year is going to be around 9 on the math on that. So 9 kids is a lot in 1 year. There's a lot of mouths to feed all at once. And they get to be about 14 to 19 inches long. And they only weigh about 2.5 pounds. So just along the edge of the ear, I'm going to go in and do that. And then it kind of goes up. And then we got a little kind of vein here and here. I took my brush and dried it off just a little bit, so I want to blend this out. Okay, so now we're going to go in with the entire bunny except for on his chest and right underneath his nose. We'll leave those areas alone. But everything else, we're going to do a light tan. A little bit darker than what we have here. So going in with my burnt umber and make a little puddle of that. So that I have enough to cover the entire bunny. Actually, it's going to be one big puddle right here. I'm going to need more burnt umber when I go to do the details on the. All right, guys. So it was right around this time that my son decided to have all of his friends over at my house, and it was Super Bowl Sunday when I was painting this. So with 9 other boys, there was no way that I could continue talking and record, and I was already in it that I didn't want to stop the whole process. If you guys are liking these videos, do me a huge favor. Please like, comment, share. There's so much that goes into YouTube videos. I have a new appreciation for people that do this kind of thing. Even simple videos require a lot of work on the back end, and especially for artists, like I had to come up with the image that I was going to do. The reference photo is a photo from a bunny that, we had been rehabbing some opossums and we were releasing them into a park. And then my friend, who's also the leader, head organizer of this rehab group, she had this bunny, and just like right as it was released from the box and about to go into the wild, it posed perfectly, and it is the cutest little picture. So I found that image, thought it would be fun to do for Easter, and I want to get this video out to you guys before Easter, unlike my St. Patrick's Day one, where it came out after St. Patty's Day, but I guess, for next year, it'll be just fine. And then I had to do the outline and doing research, and now I'm doing the editing, and during editing, I just feel like I got to vent. So during editing, I had to clean my computer because, I ran out of storage. The part that I'm recording over right now, for some reason, it wouldn't mute. So it has just been such a process, and I know every video is going to get better. I'm trying something different. I'm trying to keep this video at around a half an hour. So this section is fast forwarded at 2.5. So it is a little bit faster. So if you're not keeping up right now, you're like, whoa, she is super fast. It's because I sped up the video. I'm experimenting to see which does better, if it's an hour-long format or a half-hour-long format. When you're doing your craft, you're trying to be an entrepreneur, don't be afraid to try new things and see what works and see what doesn't work. So that's what I'm doing on this one. So on the painting, we're laying down some of that burnt umber in a light color all across the body. I start with the body first, and now I'm working on the head. And there is a lot of detail on this one. You don't have to do a lot of the detail. If you want to just do a flat wash or a couple flat washes, you can totally do that, and it will still look like a really cool bunny. The process where I talk about taking the paintbrush and spreading out the bristles and then doing some dry brushing over top of the layers that we're doing now, that will add lots of detail. So if you want to experiment with that, by all means, go ahead and do that. This is your painting. I tell you guys this all the time. It's your painting. Do with it what you want. Have fun. This is your time to explore and try new things and see what works for you. So we're just laying some of that color down in the bunny and mixing up some more of that burnt umber to cover the body. So that it is a pretty large section. It's almost like half of the third, or about a third of that page is going to be that burnt umber color, if I can talk. And so do yourself a favor and just mix up a huge pile of that milky consistency. So about half pigment, half water. You want it to be about as opaque as milk would be. So I'm going in and adding a little bit of brown into that chest area. It is mostly white, but it does have some shadow and some definition. So I'm going in and adding that there. So this is something that I did for Easter. What better way as a wildlife artist to celebrate Easter than to paint a bunny, right? So let's talk a little bit about Easter. Easter started as a celebration of new life, both in nature and in faith. And long before chocolate bunnies, people were already celebrating spring, growth, and renewal. And animals like rabbits have become symbols of that because of how quickly life returns this time of year. Earlier on we talked all about how bunnies have a lot of babies every year. Going back to the painting, we're doing some of those details around the mouth and the nose. So Easter is primarily a Christian holiday that celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And then 3 days after his crucifixion, Easter is a Christian holiday, celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and that happened 3 days after his crucifixion. It is considered to be the most important holiday in Christianity because that is when Jesus paid for all of our sins. Now, the timing is tied to the Jewish holiday of Passover, which is when Jesus was crucified. Easter isn't on a fixed date, and that's because it follows the moon cycle. It confuses me every year. Like, when is Easter exactly? It's celebrated on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And that's why it can fall anywhere between March 22nd to April 25th. Now, long before Easter became a Christian holiday, people were already celebrating spring and new life. Many historians connect Easter to ancient festivals, and they celebrated spring and fertility and renewal. So, the Easter Bunny brings all the kids eggs, and you have big Easter egg hunts every year, which is just craziness, right? I don't know how you guys feel about that. Let me know in the comments. I am not a fan. Just people are going crazy for little plastic eggs and some candy, but rabbits reproduce quickly, which is why they're the symbol of fertility and new life. And you start to see them a lot during springtime celebrations. Oh, there we go. So we're going back into the painting. I got that brush nice and damp, and then I dried it off, and then I'm dipping it in real thick watercolor, and I am just dry brushing, making sure those bristles stay nice and separated. I do have to separate them quite a few times using my fingers, and that's fine. Sometimes I'll even, where the bristles meet the metal, I'll hold the bristles open there and kind of paint. It looks a little bit awkward, but if it gets the job done, it's fine. It's gonna look a little rough at this point. And that's why we're fast forwarding here, because it takes a lot of goes over and over and over, doing lots of layers. And let's see. Yeah, the brush was fighting me on that. If you have one of those brushes that I was talking about at the beginning of the video, it makes it a lot easier. I don't tend to like using that brush, however, because the bristles are going to stay separate the same every time, and it doesn't look quite as natural, because when I'm doing it myself, as much of a pain it is as it is with this brush that I'm currently using, it's going to look different a little bit each time, and it's going to make it look a little bit more natural instead of all these parallel lines. I mean, when you look at an animal's fur, it doesn't look perfect. You can already see some dimension going on with this rabbit. Now, towards the back end of the bunny, you can kind of see it almost looks splotchy, and I do go in and fix it. You can take a nice clean brush, and that's what I did there. And you take some water and you just start blending it out a little bit. Man, I'm good. I knew my process a couple weeks later. That could be a challenge for you to try. Don't just paint. Try and explain the process as you're doing it, or after you're doing it, or maybe take notes as you're doing it. And maybe you discover something about your process, like, oh, I should maybe start here instead of there, or I should have done this type of layering, or maybe I should have added more layers. Like, there's a lot that you can discover about your own artistic journey by explaining the process as you're doing it, or maybe after the fact, or even just watching a video of your process. Enjoy the process while you're doing it, and then go back and look at the video and maybe see areas where you can improve or what you like and what you want to keep in your practice. I painted something the other day, and halfway through my painting, I realized I wasn't recording. And you know what? That time was just for me. And I decided not to make it a social media post. I did make a podcast about it, ironically. So, talking about it's okay to make art just for you. And even if it's not recorded, it still exists and it still matters. So there's going to be lots and lots of layering going on here. And then once we're done with the layering, we're still working on the body part of the layering. When we move on to the head part, you want to make sure that the body is nice and dry first, and then move into the head area. Otherwise, those colors will bleed. Remember, watercolor wants to go where there is water on the page. Guys, I cannot tell you how good it feels to finally be recording this part of my process and the voiceover, and knowing that I'm almost done editing it. I really had to push through on this one. And you know, you learn through doing, and I don't think I will be doing batch recording ever again, just because of my circumstances and how life has been right now. I had to do some batch recording, but I don't enjoy it as much. And I find during the recording process, I don't have as much, or the editing process, I'm not having as much time to really have fun with it. In some of my earlier YouTube videos, I threw in fun graphics and memes and things like that, just to try and keep it interesting. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, but you know, sometimes you just have to feed the algorithm troll as much as you can to start getting your name out there. You got to keep a nice fine balance between working and doing other things. No more burnout, no more hustle. Now we're moving on to the ears. Oh, and now I moved on back to the body. Sometimes you have to take a break from an area and then look at it with new eyes. And I took some nice clean water and just blending out some of that area. You don't want to overwork it too much because you don't want to undo all those little fine details that you just did. But adding some water and blending it out, it's helping to smooth out that blotchiness, especially towards the back end of the bunny. And if you don't want to dive directly into doing the detailed fur, like you see here on your final piece, do it on a piece of scrap paper and play around with it, see what you like and what you don't like. And I know this kind of feels like not brushing you off. Brushing you off, that's a pun. A lot of art is experimentation. So I can guide you and tell you all the different ways to do it, but unless you try it yourself, you're not going to know what exactly works best for you, or how to really lay the brush down with the pressure and everything like that. So I am simply here to be your nature art guide. Now we're working on the fur on the face. So again, nice thick paint. You want more than a milky consistency and almost like toothpaste out of the tube consistency. And we're spreading out those bristles and doing nice dry brushing to really create that look of fur. So what else can I tell you guys? I know there's more. Bunnies, the cottontail. It's not just to be cute. It's actually a warning signal. So when they run away, that flash of white on the tail signals danger to other rabbits that are nearby. So it's like they've basically got a built-in alarm system in their butt. And they don't live in burrows like you might think. They make these shallow nests, like these little depressions in the grass. And especially in the springtime, if you see like a little divot in your yard and some like dead grass kind of around it, check it for bunnies first before you mow. And if you do happen to mow over a bunny nest, there are always, I don't want to say always, there are rehab places out there that will help. And springtime is really, really difficult on rehabbers because you've got lots of spring storms. So it's going to be blowing over trees, and squirrel nests are often affected, and they get lots of calls for squirrels after a big storm. And rabbits are, they're being fertile, they're making bunnies, and they nest in people's yards. And when people go to mow, unfortunately, sometimes some bunnies can get injured. So the best thing to do, if you notice a nest before you mow, you can mark it with some string, and I will leave a link in the description of the show that will take you to a page that'll give you a little bit more education on how that looks and ways to tell if the mother is coming back to the nest, and also how to make sure that the nest stays safe during the spring season. So yeah, springtime is really hard on rehabbers, but they do lots of important work. Doing some more fine details, working on that fur. At some point here soon, we are going to be using some white gouache and using that same dry brush technique and adding some highlights into the fur. And you just have fun with it. You can use the reference photo to get an idea of where those little patches of white might be, or, kind of do it however you feel is best. And then I realized I forgot to get the brown part on the other side of the bunny's face, and I thought it looked a little wonky, and then I had to fix it. So again, cannot stress the importance of taking a step back from your painting and something doesn't look right. What could it possibly be? Looking at your reference photo. Here I am. That's 2 times speed. I'm sitting there thinking, what is wrong with this bunny? I will figure it out here soon, I promise. So another thing about bunnies is their crepuscular, crepuscular. That is a huge word, but it basically means that they are active at dawn and at dusk. And this helps them to avoid predators. And it also helps them to stay cool because, it's cooler in the mornings and in the evenings. Their ears are built for survival. They can rotate their ears independently so they can basically hear 360 degrees all around. And they will run zigzag, so it helps to be unpredictable when they're running away from predators like foxes and hawks. Gosh, I remember hearing way back when I was young, if there's an alligator chasing you, to run zigzag. And I think it's, oh my God, it's Wix. That's his handle on TikTok and Facebook. He talks about how they always talked about that when he was a kid, and he's never actually had to use it or even heard about that. All right, so there I am. I finally noticed this is what's wrong with this bunny. He needs a little bit more brown on that side of his face. So there I am fixing it. Did I not film the eyes? I don't think I filmed painting the eyes, guys. Well, if that is the case, use some layering, do the blacks of the pupils last if you're painting. That's what I like to do. Or if you're using a waterproof pen, I'll do the pupils first, make sure that's dry, and then paint. And I like to paint in layers. So a nice light layer and then dropping in some darker colors around the edges kind of makes a nice eye effect. And then I always take a little bit of white gouache and add a little white dot on the eye, and that helps for that eye to really come alive. I'm so sorry I didn't film the eyeball process, you guys, but there we go. Now we're adding the little white dot of the gouache onto the eye. And there's lots of reflection in this eye. So I'll go in. It looks a little bit heavy-handed on the white for those reflections, so I will lighten it up a little bit. You can just kind of take a nice, clean, damp brush and lift some of that paint. The way to really make a reflection look really cool is if you can see that layer underneath. It really adds some dimension and life to the eye. So we did it, guys. We made it this far. I'm so excited. I hope you all have a very happy Easter and happy painting. Congratulations on finishing your painting. Make sure that you sign your piece. It is never complete until it has your signature. Once it does, it is complete. No more touching it up. Congratulations again. And if you learned anything about bunnies, rabbits, or painting, let it inspire you to do something positive for nature today. And until next time, get outside, see what develops, and stay wild.